Everything is silent, not the peaceful kind. This is the silence before devastation, the kind that wraps around your chest and doesn't let go. The Chosen Season 6. Episode 1 doesn't just return us to Jerusalem, it drags us into the eye of the storm. This is not the beginning of the end. This is the end, creeping closer with every breath, every look, every silence. And what makes it unbearable is that he doesn't fight it. Jesus walks toward the pain, the betrayal, the cross, with open eyes and closed lips. And we are left asking, why doesn't he stop it? Why doesn't he speak? Because that silence is the sound of sacrifice. This episode is not about what Jesus says, it's about what he chooses. And what he chooses, from the garden to the courtroom, will shatter every illusion of comfort we've ever had. You think you've seen heartbreak in The Chosen before? You haven't. Not like this. It starts with footsteps in the dark. Not dramatic speeches, not miracles, not teaching, just the sound of soldiers moving through the garden. The light is gone, the crowds are gone, and so are the chances of escape. This is the moment Jesus gives himself over, not because he has to, but because the time has come. The Chosen Season 6. Episode 1 begins with a chill that goes deeper than the cold of night. It's the chill of knowing what's coming and not turning away. You feel it immediately. You feel that something sacred is being handed over, not stolen. Jesus isn't running, he's waiting. As the soldiers enter Gethsemane, they don't find a rebel. They find a man praying, a man sweating blood, a man already surrendering long before the chains ever touch his wrists. And then comes Judas, the traitor, the friend, the man who believed he was doing the right thing. The kiss isn't just betrayal, it's confirmation. It's the moment prophecy becomes pain. You can almost hear the thud of hearts breaking. And Jesus? He doesn't flinch. He lets it happen, because this is what obedience looks like when it costs everything. From there, the pace doesn't rush, it tightens. It strangles. The camera doesn't need to scream because the silence screams for it. Jesus doesn't plead. He doesn't explain. When Peter tries to fight back, slicing off a guard's ear, Jesus stops him. He heals. Even now, he heals. Because the mission was never to escape, it was to endure. That's what separates this moment from every other story we've seen. Heroes run, they fight, they resist. But this is a different kind of power. The power of surrender. The power to choose pain when you could walk away. And that choice sends shockwaves through everyone. The disciples scatter, not out of cowardice, but out of confusion, heartbreak, fear. Nothing is going the way they imagined. The Messiah they followed is being led away in chains. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen, but it is happening, and no one can stop it. Because Jesus won't let them. The calm in his face as he's dragged from the garden is more terrifying than violence. It's the calm of a man who knows the cross is coming and walks toward it anyway. Then comes the interrogation. Not by Romans, not yet. First, the religious leaders, the ones who were supposed to wait for the Messiah, the ones who knew the law better than anyone. And yet, here they are, breaking it, holding secret trials in the dead of night, summoning false witnesses, demanding answers to questions they've already judged. But Jesus, he gives them none. When Annas, the former high priest, questions him, Jesus doesn't panic, he doesn't hide. He simply says, "I've spoken openly to the world." That's it. No defense, no counterattack, just truth, and that's what gets him slapped. Not rage, not rebellion, just truth. The guard's hand strikes his face, not because Jesus is guilty, but because truth in silence is unbearable to the guilty. And still, he says nothing. The Son of God, standing in a rigged courtroom, humiliated, assaulted, judged, and he just stands there because he's not trying to win, he's trying to save. And that kind of strength, that's what makes this episode so hard to watch. You want him to defend himself. You want him to call down angels. You want him to do something, but he won't, because he already is. Meanwhile, Peter isn't far. He's watching, waiting, trying to figure out what's happening. And then, like a blade in the dark, the moment comes. "You were with him, weren't you?" Peter's voice cracks. His heart races. "No, I wasn't." The denial falls from his mouth before he even knows it. A second time, a third. The rooster crows, and the guilt hits like a hammer. This isn't just Peter's shame, it's our shame, because we all say we'd stand with him. We all believe we'd be brave, but would we? Or would we break like Peter did? Jesus hears it all, he sees Peter's face, he knows, and still, no anger, just sorrow. Because he knew it would happen. He told Peter it would, and he's still walking the path, alone, because it has to be this way. And here's the thing about The Chosen Season 6, Episode 1. It doesn't dramatize this night to make it entertaining. It slows it down to make it real, to make you sit in it, to feel the betrayal, the confusion, the injustice. This isn't history, this is present, this is personal. It's not just what happened to Jesus, it's what he chose to go through for us. And watching that unfold, moment by moment, without escape, without relief, it changes you. Because silence can be louder than screaming, and surrender can be stronger than resistance. And a man choosing to suffer, for others, is the most terrifying, beautiful, unbearable thing you'll ever witness. The night isn't over. It's just getting colder. The silence isn't lifting. It's pressing down harder, heavier, like a weight on your chest. After Annas is finished with him, Jesus is dragged through the twisting alleyways of Jerusalem to the next courtroom, the house of Caiaphas, the current high priest. But let's be clear, this isn't a trial. This is a performance, a show trial orchestrated by leaders who already know the verdict. The Sanhedrin is gathered not to seek truth, but to bury it. They bring out witnesses who twist his words. They shout accusations with trembling lips. But it's not because they're confident, it's because they're scared. Scared of what he is, scared of what he isn't. And Jesus? Still. No defense, no rage, no fear, just presence, just calm in the chaos. Every time someone lies, he says nothing. Every time someone mocks, he remains still. And that stillness, it's unsettling. It's powerful. Because when you expect someone to beg, and they just stand there unshaken, it breaks something in you. You realize they're stronger than you'll ever be, and that's exactly what terrifies Caiaphas and his court. Not that Jesus is dangerous, but that he's willing. Willing to be crushed, willing to take every insult, every slap, every lie, and still not resist. The high priest finally explodes. "Are you the Messiah?" The room holds its breath. This is the moment they've all been waiting for. His answer will either free him or finish him. And Jesus finally speaks, not to defend, not to escape, but to reveal. "You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power." That sentence, just one sentence, is enough to break the room in half. They scream blasphemy, they tear their robes, they shout for death. But what they don't realize is that he just told them the truth. He didn't lie, he didn't twist, he declared it. One sentence, and it seals his fate. That's the power of the chosen storytelling. It doesn't rush through that line. It lives in it. It lets us feel the silence before the storm and the rage that erupts when the truth can no longer be ignored. In that moment, you realize Jesus has given them exactly what they wanted. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. He didn't come to escape death. He came to walk through it. And outside, Peter is still spiraling. He's alone. The denial still echoing in his ears. His hands shake. His eyes search for a way to fix it, but there is none. And then he hears it. The rooster. A sound so small, yet so loud it splits him in two. He remembers Jesus' words, not as a warning, but as a prophecy. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter breaks, completely. He disappears into the darkness, sobbing, undone by his own weakness. But the weight of this episode doesn't just fall on Peter or the priests, it falls on us. Because the way The Chosen frames this moment, it refuses to let us be spectators. It demands that we examine our own silence, our own betrayal. Would we have stood with him? Would we have spoken up? Or would we have watched from the shadows, hoping not to be noticed? The episode doesn't let us look away. Even the setting, dark rooms, torches flickering, shadows moving across stone, feels like a nightmare. Because that's what this night is, a sacred nightmare. A moment when everything holy is mocked, when everything good is bruised. And still, Jesus stays. Back inside, they begin to strike him, not just with words now, but with fists. The guards blindfold him and play their twisted games. Prophecy, who hit you? They laugh, they push. They treat the Son of God like a joke. But what stings more than the blows is that he lets them. He takes every hit, not because he's helpless, but because this is the path. And he refuses to step off it. That's what breaks you. Not the violence, but the restraint. He could stop it all with a word, but he doesn't, because he loves too deeply to walk away. And that love, that unbearable love, is what makes this episode unforgettable. You watch him bleed, not from nails, not yet, but from fists and shame and hatred. You see the bruises form, you see the blood start to trickle, and you wonder, why doesn't he defend himself? Why doesn't he fight back? And the answer is so simple it hurts, because he's not here to win a fight. He's here to win us. The night moves toward morning, but there is no light yet. The city is asleep, or pretending to be. The few who are awake are either running from him or trying to destroy him. The crowd that once shouted Hosanna is silent. The disciples are gone. The leaders are united not in truth, but in hatred. And in the middle of it all stands Jesus, beaten, bloodied, and silent. And that silence, it becomes a roar inside the soul of anyone who watches this unfold. Because silence like that demands an answer. Not from him, from us. How do we respond to a love like that? A strength like that? A surrender that shakes the foundations of heaven and earth? The Chosen Season 6. Episode 1 doesn't give us answers. It gives us a mirror. It makes us look into the eyes of the broken, bruised Messiah and decide who we are. The night refuses to end. But it's not just darkness in the sky now. It's darkness in the hearts of men. The religious leaders, having done everything they could in secret, now drag Jesus into the public arena. Why? Because they want Rome to finish what they started. They want the hands of the empire to carry the blame while they watch from behind the veil of religion. It's cowardice. It's politics. It's betrayal layered on top of betrayal. And as Jesus is handed over to Pilate, the air thickens. The silence grows louder. Pilate isn't what anyone expects. He isn't a villain with fire in his eyes. He's a bureaucrat, a man trying to avoid problems, not cause them. And Jesus? He doesn't give him problems. He gives him silence. When questioned, Jesus offers no defense, no excuses, no anger. He stands before the governor with blood on his face, bruises on his skin, and fire in his eyes. Not the fire of rage, but of purpose. And Pilate sees it. He senses the weight of this man. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asks. And Jesus responds, not with rebellion, not with denial, but with honesty. "You say so." It's not defiance, it's truth. And it terrifies Pilate. He doesn't see a criminal. He sees a man who should be broken, but isn't. A man who should be begging, but stands calm. A man who speaks like someone who knows the end, and welcomes it. Pilate doesn't know what to do with that. So, like so many in power, he tries to shift the responsibility. He sends Jesus to Herod, hoping someone else will make the decision. But Herod is even worse. He doesn't see a man. He sees a curiosity, a performer, a miracle worker who refuses to entertain. Jesus won't answer Herod, not a word, not a look of fear, just silence. And that silence enrages the king. So they mock him. They dress him in fine robes, not to honor, but to humiliate. They laugh, they shout, they beat him again. And still, Jesus doesn't resist. He endures. Every bruise, every insult, every piece of mockery, he carries it all. Not for punishment, for purpose. Because the pain is part of the plan. The silence is part of the message. When Jesus is brought back to Pilate, he's nearly unrecognizable. The beating has taken its toll. The blood has dried on his face. The robe hangs off his shoulders like a cruel joke. And yet, he walks under his own strength. No limp, no begging, just resolve. And Pilate is stuck. He knows Jesus is innocent. He says it out loud. "I find no guilt in this man." But the crowd, they're not listening. The leaders have stirred them up. The same people who once waved palm branches now scream for blood. "Crucify him!" they chant, over and over. "Crucify him!" And here's the thing. The Chosen doesn't present this moment as an accident or misunderstanding. It presents it as deliberate, as prophetic. This is the point of no return. Pilate offers compromise. He suggests a beating, a lesser punishment. He even gives them a choice: Jesus or Barabbas, a murderer, a man who actually deserves death. And the crowd? They choose Barabbas. Not because they believe in him, but because they can't accept Jesus. Because his silence, his love, his power without violence, it offends them. It confuses them. It terrifies them. Barabbas walks free. And Jesus, who healed the sick, raised the dead, fed the hungry, takes his place. That's not just injustice. That's the gospel. That's the substitution. That's the truth the Chosen forces us to stare at, whether we're ready or not. Jesus isn't a victim of the system. He steps into it willingly. He trades his freedom for a murderer's. He walks the path of humiliation with full knowledge that it leads to the cross. And Pilate? He washes his hands. He tries to escape the weight of the moment. But no water can wash away that kind of guilt. Because when truth stands in front of you and you send it to die, that stain doesn't come off. But Pilate isn't the only one who bears that stain. So do we. The Chosen makes sure we don't forget that. It pulls the camera close. It doesn't let us hide. We are all part of that crowd. We are all part of that denial. And yet, Jesus still walks forward. For them, for us. Now the real horror begins. Jesus is handed over to the Roman guards, not for trial, not for questioning, but for torture. The flogging scene isn't just violence, it's personal. The whips don't just tear his flesh, they tear through our excuses, our comfort, our apathy. You feel each strike, not because it's graphic, but because it's quiet. There's no music, no dramatic sound design, just the sound of leather hitting skin, again, and again, and again. And still, he doesn't cry out, he doesn't curse, he doesn't break. The guards beat him until they're exhausted. Then, laughing, they twist thorns into a crown. They press it down until blood runs into his eyes. And even then, he stands, barely. But he stands. And the Chosen lets us feel every moment. Not to shock, but to remind. This is what love looks like when it bleeds. This is what obedience looks like when it costs everything. The crowd sees him again. He's broken, bleeding, barely human, and still they shout, "Crucify him!" The Roman soldiers push him forward. The cross is waiting, the hill is waiting, and heaven is still silent. But the silence isn't abandonment, it's preparation. The sky hasn't turned away, it's holding its breath, because the next step Jesus takes will echo forever. The sun is rising, but it doesn't bring hope. It brings horror. The sky turns pale as Jesus is led through the streets, carrying the very instrument of his execution. The people don't make way in reverence, they pull back in disgust. Some spit, some mock, some simply stare, their faces blank with fear or indifference. And the man walking in front of them, blood-soaked, shoulders torn, barely able to stand, is the only one not afraid. Because he knows what's waiting at the top of the hill, and he keeps walking anyway. This isn't the Jesus who preached to thousands. This isn't the miracle worker. This is the Lamb, silent, bruised, sacrificed. And yet, this is when his love is most visible. Not in the teaching, not in the healing, but in the walking. Step after step, with a crown of thorns digging into his skull and the weight of wood crushing his bones, he walks. And the silence? It's louder than ever. The Chosen doesn't fill this moment with music or shouting. It lets the sound of dragging wood, shallow breathing, and weeping speak for itself. Simon of Cyrene is pulled from the crowd, not because he volunteered, but because the Romans forced him. He doesn't know who this man is. He doesn't understand why he's helping. But the moment he lifts the cross, something happens. He sees Jesus' eyes, and suddenly, Simon isn't helping a criminal. He's walking beside someone who's carrying something bigger than wood. He's carrying the weight of every betrayal, every failure, every sin. And he's doing it silently. By the time they reach Golgotha, the crowd is massive. Not because they care, but because they want to see death. People have always been drawn to crucifixions. They don't come to mourn. They come to watch a man break. But Jesus doesn't break the way they expect. The guards throw him on the cross like a piece of meat. They stretch his arms. They hold down his hands. The nails are cold. The hammer is heavier than it should be. 1 strike, 2, 3. Metal drives through flesh, and still, he doesn't scream. The pain isn't just physical, it's cosmic. This is the moment the heavens should split open. This is the moment angels should come down, swords drawn. But nothing happens. Heaven is still, earth is still. The only thing that moves is the blood pouring from his hands. And yet, this is the plan. Jesus doesn't beg for rescue. He doesn't call for revenge. He prays. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Imagine that. Forgiveness, not fury. Compassion, not condemnation. The other criminals. One mocks, the other pleads. Remember me, the second thief says. And Jesus, with dried blood on his lips, turns to him, not in anger, not in pity, but in promise. Today, you'll be with me in paradise. Even here, nailed to a cross, surrounded by hate, Jesus still saves, still loves, still speaks life. That's the part The Chosen nails perfectly. It doesn't give us a Jesus who's trying to survive. It gives us a Jesus who's choosing to die. For them. For us. Below the cross, the crowd is divided. The soldiers gamble for his clothes, laughing like it's a festival. The priests shake their heads, saying, "He saved others. He can't save himself." And then there's Mary, his mother, watching her son bleed, powerless to stop it. Her silence is the echo of heaven's silence. She doesn't scream. She doesn't faint. She simply watches, because she knows this is what he came to do. And still, it breaks her heart. John stands beside her, the only disciple who didn't run. And Jesus, with his breath growing thin, looks down, not to blame, but to love. Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. Even while dying, he's thinking of others. Even while suffocating, he's holding his people together. This is not a man crushed by defeat. This is a king fulfilling a mission. Then the sky begins to shift. The light fades. The wind changes. It's not just a storm. It's a statement. Nature itself starts to mourn. For 3 hours, darkness covers the land. And in that darkness, the silence becomes unbearable. Even the crowd begins to feel it. Even the soldiers start to realize. This is no ordinary execution. Something holy is happening. Something terrifying, something eternal. Jesus lifts his head, barely, and finally, after so long, he cries out, not in anger, but in agony, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That cry tears through the air like lightning, because that's not just pain, it's separation. For the first and only time in eternity, the Son is separated from the Father. And why? For us. So we would never have to be. Then, the final words, soft, broken, complete. It is finished. Not shouted, declared, because it wasn't failure. It was victory. The mission was complete, the sacrifice accepted, the price paid in full. He bows his head and dies. The earth shakes, rocks split, the veil in the temple tears in two. Heaven doesn't stay silent forever. When the final breath leaves his body, creation reacts. Not in celebration, in grief. The very foundation of reality trembles, because the Creator just died. And in that moment, a Roman centurion, who's seen countless executions, who's carried out dozens of crucifixions, whispers the only words that matter. Surely, this was the Son of God. Not because of thunder, not because of miracles, but because of how he died. Because of how he stayed silent. Because of how he forgave, even in agony. And that's where The Chosen leaves us in this episode. Not with hope, not yet, but with a grave silence that demands reflection. It doesn't wrap things up with comfort. It opens a wound. It asks us to look at the cross, not as a story we've heard before, but as a decision we have to face. Jesus didn't die as a victim. He died as a choice. And now, the choice is ours. Will we run like Peter? Will we mock like the crowd? Will we stay like Mary? Or will we finally see what the centurion saw? Because this silence, the silence of heaven, the silence of Jesus on trial, the silence of the cross, isn't empty. It's full of meaning, full of love, full of sacrifice. The Chosen Season 6. Episode 1 doesn't just retell the Passion story. It drags us into it. It makes us feel every hesitation, every whip, every tear. It holds our face to the horror so that when hope does return, it means something. And that's what makes this episode not just powerful, but sacred.